Welcome to Band in a Box 2023. This is the second bootcamp video for Band in a Box 2023 where I do a deep dive into some of the new features. And in this video, I'll be looking at the new SynthMaster Player plugin that is now included with Band in a Box 2023, and I'll also be using a bunch of other new features as well. In the first one, I explored partial regeneration of RealTracks and a lot of other features, and you can find a link for that in the comments below. So SynthMaster is an award-winning synth by KV331 Audio with thousands of presets that are especially useful for modern pop, EDM, and similar genres. A lot of the sounds also use really good arpeggiator features, which we'll also check out. There are a few ways you can use these sounds. We have new MIDI SuperTracks that load specific SynthMaster sounds. There are Band in a Box styles that use them. There are also built-in presets in Band in a Box that load certain sounds, and you can just explore the plugin yourself and find sounds you like. So in this video, I'll be looking at all of these different ways of using SynthMaster, and I'll also explore some other related features such as the Generate Chords feature, which is great to create a track that can then use SynthMaster pads or SynthMaster arpeggiator sounds. So right now I just have a blank song here, so why don't I just enter some chords to get started here. I'll go A minor, maybe F major 7 here, back to A minor again. I'll go F minor 9 there. I want to enter a chord with some extensions because I'm going to use the chord track feature later, and I wanted to use that as an example. F sharp 7. I'll also hit P once and then twice to change this to a B part marker. And then maybe B2, F sharp 7 again, and then B minor and E7, which would bring it back to A minor. And I'm just going to copy those last 16 bars by typing K, which is a really handy shortcut, and 16 indicating it's copying 16 bars. I wanted to show you another new feature as well, since I'm entering this song in A minor. Right now the key is just showing as C. I can change that, but I'm going to leave it for a minute. I'm going to go to Views, choose Type of Chord Display, and go to Nashville Notation. I'll just make this a little bigger here. Now, if you're not familiar with Nashville notation, it's changed the letters of the chords that we have to numbers. And the numbers are in relation to the key that you're currently in. So we're in the key of C, and A is the 6th degree of the C major scale, and so the A minor chord is showing as 6 minor. But if I change the key to A minor, we can see that now A is the 1st degree of the A minor scale, so it's showing as 1 minor. Now this is something that you could do in the past, but it wasn't the default. The previous default was that it would still show you the chord's relation to the relative major even if you had the key set to A minor. So it would still show this as 6 minor. Like I said, you could change it then, but this is now the default, which is a lot more intuitive, makes a lot more sense. But I'll change that back to regular standard notation. Now, I mentioned before there are a lot of ways that you can use SynthMaster, and the first one I mentioned was that you could just pick a style that uses SynthMaster. So I'm going to show you that right now. I'm going to go into the style picker. So this is the style picker, and you can see there are over 10,000 styles in this list to choose from. So there are a few different ways that we can narrow this list down to see styles that use SynthMaster. Probably the easiest way is just to type SynthMaster. So there are now 6 items in this list. The first item, City Life, is the style that we had loaded before I got started here. So these 5 styles here all use SynthMaster. By the time this video goes live, that number will probably have increased as well as we add new styles that use SynthMaster. So now I can just double click on these to hear a sample of what the style sounds like. So there's another way that you can sample these, and that's to have them actually play some of the chords in the song that you actually have loaded there. Now that's a feature that existed previously, and you would access that from this area of the style picker. But there is a new feature that lets you just double click in the list to do that same thing. So I'm going to go to the dialog options, and here I'll select this, double click on style, plays chord sheet chords. So now that means that when I double click on it, like I did with that picnic style, it will actually load that style and play a little bit of the song that I entered earlier. And this is useful as well. This was already set that it will change my song to the best tempo for the style. Now, these styles can of course be played at many different tempos, but they have kind of an ideal spot, and the closer it is to that, the better the style will sound. And then you can also set the number of bars that you want to preview, and I'll just leave it at 4. That'll give me a good sense of how the style is going to sound over these chords that I entered. So I'll try a couple more of these now, and it will play the actual song and change it to the ideal tempo. For example, this, it should change it to 65 beats per minute. So those were both sounding pretty cool, and that is a great way that you can get started working on a song, is to actually pick one of the styles from the style picker. However, another approach is to really just do it from scratch, like just have a blank canvas. And sometimes that's the way I like to sort of build a song up. And so I'm going to actually pick a style here that really is no style at all. I'm just going to filter by metronome. And that now gives me these options, and I'm just going to do a plain old straight ahead 4/4 metronome here. So I'm going to hit OK. So now there are no RealTracks, no MIDI SuperTracks, nothing loaded at all. This really is a blank canvas. I'm just going to just show that drum track there. So there we go. So now I'm just going to start off with drums. I'm going to find a good drum style to use, and then I'm just going to start adding tracks to this. And I'll be using a lot of SynthMaster sounds as part of this. So first though, I'm going to pick a real drum style, and I'm going to use that as the basis for this, and then I'm just going to build off that with some SynthMaster styles, maybe add some RealTracks as well. So I'm going to click here and select real drums. All right, so here is the real drums picker, and I'm going to filter this by reggaeton. I think I want to try out some of the new reggaeton drums that we've added with Band in a Box 2023. And I'll try this first one on the list here, Reggaeton Playa. So it'll just be playing drums now, no other instruments, so it won't be playing any chords here, of course, but I'll just press play to listen to a little bit of what this sounds like. All right, so now I'm going to build it up from here. So I'd like to add some bass. So I'm going to bring in another track here that I can then add a bass to. And I think I'll actually pick a MIDI SuperTrack that will load SynthMaster. So I'll select MIDI SuperTrack. And similar to the style picker, the MIDI SuperTracks picker here can be filtered in the same way. So now all of these styles here will automatically load the SynthMaster plugin to go along with the MIDI SuperTracks. And like in the style picker, this list here probably will also be a little bit bigger by the time this video goes live. So I'm looking for basses specifically, so I'll also add bass to the filter there. And now we can sample some of these. You know what? I think I'd like to try this one out. Let's see how that sounds with the... Oh, and now it's given me this message here. Okay to load this SynthMaster patch. And yes, that is the whole point of this. So I definitely want it to load that. So there we go. Now we've added this, and now this one will play over this chord progression as well. So let me just play a little bit of it. So that's very cool. I like the groove between that bass and those drums there. That now gives me a pretty good foundation to move forward. And if I click on the plugins tab here, this is the plugin that got loaded with that MIDI SuperTracks. So this here is the SynthMaster player that we're now looking at. And let me play a little bit of it again. You can see that the notes that Band in a Box is sending to the plugin will show up here during playback. So let me start from the beginning again with that. Yeah, very cool part there. So now I'm going to start adding some more tracks that will also use SynthMaster. I'm going to bring in another one here. All right, so unlike the last one where I loaded a MIDI SuperTrack that actually generates a MIDI part and then also loads the SynthMaster plugin, I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. First of all, I'm just going to generate some basic block chords on this track, Utility 2, using a new feature. So I'll right click and I'll go to Edit MIDI and I'll select Generate Chord Track on this track. So that brings up this dialog, which gives us some options before it creates this new MIDI part. So channel, I'll just leave it at channel 1. The plugin here isn't really channel specific, so that's perfectly fine to just leave it like that. 90 is a relatively neutral velocity, so I'll leave it at 90. If you want it particularly quiet, you can put a low value. If you want it particularly loud, you can put a higher value. Now here, the note range to output. Now, as I mentioned, this is going to be writing a basic chord track, but those chords can be low chords or they can be high chords. So 60 is middle C, and it shows you that's the little guide there here, middle C equals 60. So this is going to be going from middle C to the C above middle C. So it's going to generate chords, but all of the notes will conform to that range right there. So for chord types, there are a couple of options here. The first is triads or sevenths only. So for example, if I selected that, this F minor 9, it would probably just play an F minor or F minor 7, but it wouldn't play the extension with the 9th up there. Same with this B2 chord here. So, and then the other option is complex chords, which will pretty much play what you've entered in here right now. So I'll pick the first one for now, but I'll show you the other one later. So then number of ticks before chord change to output. So as I said, it's going to just write block chords for all of these chords right where the chord is entered. But if you put a value in here, it's going to write them a little bit early. Now you might want this if it's like pads or something like that that you're using with a very slow attack. That way they start a little bit earlier so it has a chance to swell, and then musically that might make a little more sense and might sound more natural. I'm just going to leave this at 0 though, which means it's going to write all of these exactly on the downbeat. And you have an option to write chords during the lead-in, but I'll leave that off. So I'm just going to write the chords now. So now I'll go to the piano roll and we'll have a look at some of these chords. So for example, the A minor chord there, it's playing an A and an E and a C, all between middle C and C above middle C. The F major 7 chord, it's playing C, E, F, and A. Let me skip ahead a few chords here. The F minor 9 chord, it's playing C, E flat, so the 7th, so it is including the 7th there, and then F, and then A flat, but it's not including G, which would be the 9th of the chord. So again, that's just because of the setting we chose, but I could change that if I wanted to actually get the G in examples like this. Same with this B2 chord. It's playing a B, a D sharp, and an F sharp, but not a C sharp, which would be the 2 of that chord. So right now we just have the chords here, but we haven't actually picked a SynthMaster sound yet. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to Select MIDI Instrument Patch, and I'm going to go to Select Hi-Q MIDI Patch Plugin. So this dialog here shows all of our old Hi-Q sounds. It also shows all the playable real drums and the playable RealTracks, and then it also has the SynthMaster sounds. So just like before, I am just going to filter this by SynthMaster. And also, like in those other dialogues, by the time this video goes live, there will likely be some more presets in here as well. And again, like those other dialogues, you can just double click on some of these to sample what they sound like. So it plays the solo instrument first, but then plays it with that instrument in the context of a full band. So now I've picked one here, and you'll notice that it has AR and also has ARP in the name. So the sounds that have ARP in them, like these other ones as well, they use arpeggiator features within the plugin. So I'm actually going to pick this one here, AR Melodic Wave ARP, and try that over these chords that we've entered. So you'll see, even though all that got entered here is just a block chord that just lasts for 2 whole bars, the plugin itself, when it receives that information, also receives the tempo information from the song, and is therefore able to play arpeggios rather than just playing a block chord. So I'm going to open up the plugin so we can see this as well, because it shows you in here the notes that it's actually playing on the keyboard here. So even though Band in a Box is feeding it just these block chords, we'll see on here the arpeggios that are being played. So that's a really neat part there. But I'm finding it kind of a little sort of in your face right now. And I think that's partly to do with the range. I think maybe if these notes are lower, that it might blend a little more in the background and still be really cool, but not be so present. So I'm going to go back into that same feature. So for starters, I'm going to allow complex chords this time. And now I'm going to change the note range. So we had it starting at middle C. If I subtract 12 from that, it's basically going down an octave. Now before I had a range of a full octave, 60 to 72. But you don't need to put that in. In this case, I'm actually going to make it shorter than an octave. I'm going to make it 48 to 55. So what that means is basically it's going from C, an octave below middle C, but then only up to G. So what that means is that for any chords that are generated, any A flat, A, B flat, or B will simply not be used. So the upshot of that basically is that all of the chords that get written, there might be some that are triads, but a lot of them might end up being 2-note voicings, and that's kind of what I want, I think, for this one. At least I'll try it out and we'll see how it sounds. So that's what I'm going to write the chords to right now. Now for starters too, you can see that over this B2 chord, it has now put a C sharp because I now am allowing for more complex chords. But let me just press play and we'll listen from the beginning now here. and see what it sounds like at that lower register and also with a more constricted range. So you can see, I found that quite effective myself. And you can see that, for example, the A minor chord doesn't have an A in it because that was outside of the range. But it still sounded really cool then to just go to this two-note voicing for the A minor. This more complex chord then ended up having more notes. But it was still very effective. And I like that narrow range. And I think I really liked it in the lower register like that. Let me play a little bit more. Yeah, I'm quite liking that so far. So I'm going to take a little break from adding more SynthMaster sounds because I'm really loving the way this is sounding right now with the electronic elements in there. But I want to give it a bit of an organic feel. So I'm going to add a few other real tracks and real drums here. So I'll bring in another track to use. And in this one, I think maybe I'll see if I can find some congas that will work. So I'll choose real drums. And I'll change the filter to congas. Even 16ths congas, I'll just try that out. And I'll press play. All right, I'm liking that. That's already now sounding like I love the combination of the electronic and the organic elements there. And I think maybe I'll add some guitars as well here. So I'll bring back maybe a couple tracks. I'll see if I can find a couple good guitars for this. So I will select RealTracks for utility 4. All right, so I'll just filter by modern pop guitar in here. So there's lots of options. I want something that's relatively close to our tempo here of 105 beats per minute. And I'll just start double clicking and see if I find some that I like. I'll only check out ones that tempo wise are not too far off from the 105 here. Those are cool. I don't know how well they would fit with this particular groove. These are sort of out of the tempo range. Also very cool, but not, I think, what I'm looking for here. That one is quite close to the tempo range. It's only 10 beats per minute slower. Let's check out this one too. There, I think those two might be. They're very subtle. I think those might be good options there. So utility 4, I'll go with this one, and I'll put the other one on utility 5. So those have now been added, and we have the conga. Let's listen to that now a little bit. All right, I'm liking the way this is sounding so far. So now I think I'll get back to more SynthMaster and kind of layer some more synths on this. I'll add another track here. And I'll use the same chord thing again. And I think I'll go back for this. That was at least a good starting point. 60 to 72 was a good starting point. So I'll go back to that, and I can always change it. So I'll write chords to that, so we have that same thing now on this track as well. And in this case here, I won't look at one of our plugins. I'm just going to explore the SynthMaster plugin itself. So I'll choose a plugin. I'll pick SynthMaster. Now, one thing you should know that when you load in the SynthMaster player just on its own like this, it has a default sound that it uses, and it's a drum sound. So that would sound pretty weird right now if I was to play it back with this. Well, I'll just play you a little bit of how it's going to sound right now. There you go. So just so you know, that is the default sound when you load the SynthMaster player. But you can just click on any of the types here, bass, bowed strings, and I clicked on SynthPad at the bottom here, and that narrows the list of plugins so it has just synth pads, and that includes arpeggiated sounds like these ARP ones here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start this playing, and I'm going to listen to different sounds being played through this chord track here and see if I find something I like. Okay, kind of cool, but not exactly what I'm after. Not that. Now this is kind of a cool one here. So this is an arpeggiated one. It isn't technically an arpeggio in that it's going up and down the chord tones, but it is doing something really neat in that it plays it at a lower range and then plays it at a higher range, which is kind of cool. Let me play that again a little bit. Yeah, I think I like that one. I'm going to pick that. So I'm going to keep that one on the track there. But I think, like with the last one I used, this isn't quite the range that I want. I think I want to maybe not go down a full octave, but just lower some of the notes. So I'm going to use another different new feature, again in the Edit MIDI track, and I'll go to Adjust Octave of Notes to Fit Note Range. This is going to basically do the same thing as I did previously with regenerating the chord track, but I wanted to demonstrate this because this can be used to adjust the range of any MIDI, not just newly generated chord tracks. So this dialog kind of has two parts. First of all, I'm going to enter a number that will be the lower portion of the range. So in this case, I wanted it down a bit, but not a full octave. So I'm going to have the lowest notes be, say, 55. And I'll hit enter. And then it's already filled in an octave above 66. So you can see that has now lowered some of the notes. There are still notes above middle C, as expected, but now the notes that were above a certain range have been lowered down to below middle C. So let me play from the top again and listen how that now sounds now that we've made that change. right, I'm really liking the way that is sounding right now, but I haven't actually added any pads yet. We have bass, and then we have two things doing arpeggiator things. I think a final nice track over this would be to just have just some pads playing kind of a shimmering kind of thing over the whole thing. So once more, bringing in a new track. I'll do the same chords thing. That's a really handy function. Generate chord track. And I'll probably end up changing it again too, but this is a good starting point. So I'll just leave it with exactly the same settings there. So again, I'll load SynthMaster. I'll avoid this again by just clicking on SynthPad and picking one of these, and that'll be my starting point. So I'll just play through now and try a bunch of different ones. I'll avoid the ones that say ARP here. Oh, I'll also make it a little quieter. There we go. All right, so that's not sounding bad. But I think I want something a little softer. Also, I'm just going to set this to multiple choruses so that it'll just continue playing through and repeating those bars that I had. So I'll generate and play again. So there were some nice sounds that I was finding in there. But this one, I think this is a really nice, soft, kind of gentle thing that can just sort of shimmer over the whole thing. So I will, let me just start this playback again here. This is just a nice shimmering thing. Yeah, I think this might be the one that I'll pick for this. Nice strings. Very good description, because they are nice strings. Right, now I think the last thing I want to do with this track here that I've made is add my own little part to it. So I've got my guitar plugged into my audio interface here, and I was thinking of playing just a really simple little part that would go from the A minor chord to the F major 7, and the same little thing to go from the A minor to the F minor 7. Now you have been able to record audio in the past, but now new features have been added so that you're able to monitor the input along with the effects that you have on that track that you're recording to. So I'll show you that right now. I'll bring in another track here, Utility 8, and actually I'm going to bring in another one, Utility 9 as well. Now on Utility 8, I'm going to add a tremolo because I want to do a part that's got a cool little tremolo part, just a really simple line here. So if I right click on the VU meter here, we can see there are some new options. Arm track, and I'll get to that in a moment, but then there's these options, stereo to stereo, or mono left to stereo, or mono right to stereo. Now, my audio interface has two inputs, so basically those two inputs are left and right. So my left one I'm using for this microphone that I'm talking through right now, and the right one, my guitar is plugged into it. So if I select mono right to stereo, that means my guitar will be going to this track. So I'll leave that there, and I will arm the track. You can see now the VU meter has turned blue here. So I'll just play a few notes on the guitar. So you were hearing that now, you were seeing it in the VU meter here, and you were hearing it with these effects that I put onto that track. So if I put a different effect, for example, on utility 9, and I put distortion, for example, if I arm this track instead, we're now hearing the distortion there. So, but I will arm this track here. Another thing I wanted to show as well is that these VU meters now show in stereo, and I can actually highlight that really well with this one here. If I go stereo to stereo, basically then, as I pointed out, my microphone is coming through the left channel and the guitar is through the right. So if I go stereo to stereo, now you're hearing my voice on the left side with this tremolo here added to it. And you can see that just the left side, just the top part of the VU meter is showing. That's because my voice is now going through that side. And if I play some guitar as well, there you can see my voice is on the top, the guitar is on the bottom because my voice is left, the guitar is right. So I'll switch this back to just the guitar, and I'll show you then on the drums track here, if I start playback and I move the pan from left to right, you'll see this switching from the line being longer on the top when I pan to the left, than the line being longer on the bottom when I pan to the right. So that's another really cool new feature as well, that you now have a better visual representation of what you're actually hearing. So that being said, I have this tremolo loaded here. I have a simple little part that I had in mind to add to this. So I am now going to actually record that on there. And as mentioned earlier in the video, since that part of the video was recorded, we've now added more SynthMaster presets, new MIDI SuperTracks that load SynthMaster sounds, and new reel styles, including a reel style based on the parts that were put together in this video, Playa Modern Pop Reggaeton. I hope you enjoyed this video and have fun!